I'd like to introduce you to the dubbed pheasant tail. This has become a confidence fly for me during the winter and spring months when fish are potentially deep or the water is running high. This is how you tie it. Start out with a Daiichi 1130 wide gape hook. This is a size 16. Pair it with a brass bead. Thread the brass bead on any way you know how, and I've pinched the barb on this Daiichi 1130 before bringing it to the vise. Get a base of brown UTC 70 denier started behind that brass bead, and bring your thread back to the bend of the hook. Here we're going to tie in some tail fibers, and instead of using pheasant tail, I'm going to use a grizzly brown hackle. You can use pheasant tail. You can also use Coq de Leon, which is a very popular mottled feather fiber. I'm just using brown grizzly because it's very durable and it's a little bit darker color. It matches the nymphs a little bit better in my home waters. Strip off a small clump of fibers from the hackle feather and bring it to your hook for measurement. Capture those fibers on the back side of that hook and bring your thread up towards the brass bead to cover the butt ends. Next, I'm going to tie in a ribbing material, which is 32 gauge gold wire from Larva Lace. Use the far back side of your scissors to trim off this wire before bringing it to your hook to get tied in. Stick the wire in the back end of the brass bead, capture it with your thread, and begin making wraps rearward to secure the wire to the entire hook shank, all the way back to the original tie-in point. Leave that hanging off the back of the hook for now. End those thread wraps at the midpoint of the hook shank. That's where we'll start our dubbing noodle for the body. The next material is what makes this fly a confidence fly for me, and it's pheasant tail Firestar dubbing. Firestar is the OG synthetic flashy dubbing material. It has UV properties, it's durable, and it simply catches fish. Whenever I need to give a fly a little bit of an edge, I reach for the Firestar dubbing. You don't think it's that special until you start using it, and then you realize, okay, it is that special. Begin wrapping rearward with that dubbing noodle to where the dubbing meets the hook shank at the original tie-in point of the fly. At that point, you can start bringing that material forward in touching wraps to dub the pheasant tail's body. Start off thin on the backside and add a little bit of a taper as you move towards the thorax. End your dubbed body about 3/4 of the way up the hook shank. Next, you're going to wrap your wire forward through that dubbed body in open spirals all the way up to behind the brass bead. There you can capture that wire off and just bend it back and forth until that wire breaks off at the tie-in point. Next, we're going to tie in the wing case, which is holographic tinsel. This is a silver holographic tinsel. Just gives this fly a little bit more attraction. As I mentioned, this is going to be used in conditions where you want the fish to see this fly and react to it. Let that holographic tinsel hang off the backside while you tie in the thorax material, which is just Peacock Herl. It brings a lot of iridescence and bugginess to the thorax of this fly that other materials just can't match. I'm going to use 2 Herl feathers and trim the butt sections before bringing it to the hook shank to be tied in. After I tie those Herl feathers in, I'm going to add just a dab of super glue to where these Herl feathers are going to be wrapped to ensure future durability. After you add that dab of super glue, go ahead and bring your Herl feathers forward in touching wraps to create the thorax of this fly. Once you get to behind the brass bead, capture those feathers down with a few wraps of thread, bring a few wraps in front as well, and trim or pull off the tag ends of Peacock Herl. Next, I'm going to add some legs, and again, I'm going to reach for the grizzly hackle. Grab a small section of brown grizzly hackle for each side of this pheasant tail fly. I like mine to extend about halfway into the dubbed body of this dubbed pheasant tail. Just enough to splay out and give that nice leggy profile of a nymph moving through the water. Hold those hackle fibers up on the side of the fly, pinch them with your finger and your thumb to keep them in place, and then make a few wraps to secure them in their spot on the side. Those thread wraps will help to splay out those hackle fibers and give it a nice buggy look. Repeat on the opposite side of the hook shank and trim off those butt ends of hackle fibers. Next, we're going to bring that holographic tinsel over the top to create the flashback wing case. Pull that small piece of tinsel over, capture it with a few wraps of thread, pull it rearward, and bring a few thread wraps in front as well. Pull it straight up and trim off the excess. After you get that wing case tied in, go ahead and whip finish or half hitch your way to finishing this fly, and then you can trim that ultra thread from the hook shank. Finally, I like to add a little bit of UV resin to the wing case of this dubbed pheasant tail. I like to use the thin formula of resin and apply it in different coats. So I'll add just a little bit at a time and cure it before adding another coat until I feel satisfied in the amount of resin that's sitting on that wing case. In this case, it was 3 applications. This has become a confidence pattern for me. When fish see this fly, it instantly attracts them. Whether they eat every time is a different story, but give it a try on your home waters. I hope it helps you out. These are all the materials you'll need to tie the dubbed pheasant tail. Head down to your local fly shop. Make sure to ask for Larva Lace by name, especially Firestar dubbing. If you can't find it at your fly shop, make sure they go to hagensfish.com, or they can email Lorie if they have a specific request, just so they can have the highest quality synthetic fly tying materials on the market. Larva Lace is a product of Hagens in Mitchell, South Dakota. We love fishing, and we love helping anglers find fishing success. Follow us on social media. Share these videos with your networks. Make sure that they know how to tie these amazing flies. And let us know if there's a pattern you'd like to see tied in the future. Until then, thanks for tying with Larva Lace. Here's to tight lines and well-tied flies.